Hi everyone. Can you hear me okay? This is Cate Greaves, and great, everyone can hear me. And this is an hour's recording on awakeningtogether.org, and they run some wonderful programs. It's a site dedicated to an assembly of equals joined in one purpose, awakening to the one true self. And I feel very honoured to be part of that group that are dedicated, joined in one purpose. So each week I do a recording live. I try to do it live on the show. Awakening-together.org. If you'd like to look it up, they have a schedule there on that website of all the recordings, and they have some great teachers, and there's a huge variety of different spiritual teachers, and they also play some other recordings as well, like Shanti I've heard before, some different things that you might actually have to pay to get those recordings, and they're all broadcast on their website. So I recommend, hello. So this is a live interaction through Pal Talk. And so, yeah, if you're listening to this, I'd recommend that you get onto their site and you have a look. Regina Dawn-Akers is, I think, the director of Awakening Together, and she puts it together, and there's lots of volunteers and staff, and, you know, it's just lovely that we all come, you know, we come together for this purpose. And I feel blessed to be asked to present something that's coming from my heart, the spirit of love, through this vessel called Cate. I suppose on my journey, before I start talking, I might just do a quick prayer, just because it's very helpful to ask the Holy Spirit to be with you and put him in charge. And it's the Holy Spirit is nothing but your right mind. So it's a conscious decision for the love and the wisdom in your mind to be in charge of your day. So, Holy Spirit, you be in charge. You are the love, the light, the wisdom, the all. You are the everything, the softening, the relaxing, the sinking in, the releasing, the letting go. You are the peace, beyond peace. And when I sink in, I consciously sink below the thoughts of the mind. I get to the stillness. And in that stillness, I can speak from a very, very still mind. So, Holy Spirit, you be in charge of everything I say today, not just in this hour, but everything. I'm just going to turn my heater off. So, I've got a couple of topics for today, and a friend of mine, it's 8 a.m. in Melbourne, Australia, where I live, the following day from when most are listening, and just goes to show you how fluid time is, as someone else is experiencing a different time on their clock to me. So, what is time? That's always an interesting topic, especially when you get into time zones and different days, and you start to realise that time is, you can't really find time. It doesn't say, it's not a practical device for me to be here, to know the time that I need to be here. But it's a wonderful tool to meditate on, just to meditate on what is time and just sit. And I'm going to talk a little bit about meditation. That was on what I felt to share about today. And when I woke up this morning, I had a friend message me and say, "Cate, did you meditate on your journey to awakening, or did it help you wake up?" And, I suppose for me, I'm getting more and more away from this term waking up. Initially, it was a term I used a lot. What I now, it's a couple of years down the track for me, so I'm a newbie, I would say, and it's great to talk on these shows and in the groups and things that I do, because it's, as I say, it matures. And I noticed that I've started to use the word liberated more than waking up, because that word has never resonated with my mind. It's always been about something dropping away rather than something waking up. It's always felt like something left. And I guess whoever coined that phrase, waking up, that was how they felt. That was the words that they used. And it feels like when we talk about the word waking up or awakening, it gives you the impression that the mind wakes up in terms of something's added to it. I don't know, maybe that's just the way I'd interpret those words when I was on my journey. But what seemed to happen for me, for my mind, and I think this is what happens on the journey, is he talks about, in the Course in Miracles, Jesus talks about the blocks being removed. And so what happened for me was each grievance and each judgment seemed to just drop away. They changed. So I became, the more and more I looked at each grievance with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, which are sort of one and the same, but for some reason I would have it, they had sort of a slightly different flavour in the way I interacted with them in my mind. And I can't even explain that, but I probably, when you're listening to this, you might have a sense of that as well. So my friend asked me about, did I meditate? And I said, yes, I did. I believe that even though the word meditation might not be written too many times in the Course, he's pointing to it a lot. He's asking us to get still. One lesson, he really asks us to get still and quieten our mind and get beneath the thoughts that are in our mind. And I really did my own course. I didn't have a teacher. I didn't have a group as such. I did, when I really decided that I was fully committed into the course, and it was really a commitment to undo the grievances and the judgments in my mind. And I had a lot, and I had more to come. And it's really what the forgiveness is about. So the course terms forgiveness as overlooking and being still and not judging, and I guess waiting. So not reacting to what the mind, the ego mind, sees. And so the forgiveness for me was a constant. Yes, of course, I got a reaction. The ego, as he says, the ego speaks first. So the ego mind will come in, it'll give its judgment, it'll tell its story. And then he's asking us to, from that state of being upset, is to notice it and then, okay, I've got to go to the Holy Spirit and ask for help to see this differently because I'm upset. So the forgiveness in the Course in Miracles is about constantly asking the Holy Spirit for guidance, for a new way of seeing the situation, and being still in that moment when you ask. Sometimes I would have something happen at work and I wasn't able to get still. So I got clarity. So I would just put that aside for the moment. I might still feel the effects during the day. If somebody had said something and I was upset, I would wait until I got home, and then I would sit and I would go over what had happened, and then I would ask for guidance, help me see this differently. And then I was also given little things to do which would be helpful to me. At one stage, I had a problem with a girl at work, and the Holy Spirit, one of the things I got advised to do was every time I walked past her office was to say in my mind, I love you, I love you. Just in my mind, keep her in my mind and just say, I love you. And so the Spirit works with each of us in our forgiveness. And sometimes you have to be really dedicated for this, because sometimes some people ask me, some of these questions about guidance. Can the guidance be sabotaged by the ego? And I guess I've always felt that the very different what is the ego and what is the Holy Spirit. Like, to me, they seem so different in my mind. And the guidance from the Holy Spirit is always about helping me see something different, correcting me, getting me in a more loving state of mind. It just is embodying, it's a guide that's always helping me to shift from fear to love. Now, I recently had somebody get upset with me about 6 months ago about something. They were projecting something onto me, and we discussed it a couple of times, and they said that, Jesus had said you shouldn't have done da-da-da-da-da. And I noticed in that moment that couldn't be possible, because Jesus wouldn't look out to somebody else and say that they shouldn't have done that. That is the ego. So I noticed that if you're really serious about this, you have to be really careful about believing that you're right and that that person should change, and that any guidance that says somebody did something and they caused you to feel that way, that is the ego. And I was pretty flabbergasted by that, because that I've heard other teachers talk about the ego impersonating the spirit. It never happened to me. And I really had to say to this person, you know, look, you really need to, it's all about our projections, and everything is about my mind and how I'm seeing it. And it's never, ever about anyone needing to change. It's accepting the atonement. And the atonement is the correction to my thinking. It's never, ever, ever about anyone else correcting their thinking or behaviour. So that's a really good, clear key as to whether your guidance is clear or not. And that's all we're here to do, is to correct the mind. The behaviour will follow when your mind's corrected by the Holy Spirit. So there was something that I just felt to share was, if anyone's practicing A Course in Miracles, they've got the book, they're doing the workbook and whatever. I remember I've been reading Nasagadatta's book, I Am That, and I haven't read it properly. I'm just opening it randomly and reading, you know, a couple of pages here and there, and it's a lovely book. But what I noticed in the front of the book is when he was asked about his liberated mind, he said, I just did what my teacher asked me to do. And that really resonated with me, because when I started practicing the Course of Miracles properly, I just did what Jesus asked me to do. I surrendered what I thought I should do, and I did the lessons the way he wanted me to do. I read the preamble to each part of the lessons, and I did them the way he asked me to do. So I was taking a course, and he was the teacher. And he asked me not to try and understand the lessons, but to practice them. So I put Jesus in charge of my life. And I can't say that doubt didn't come in at times, and it did. But as the saying he says, doubt will come and doubt will go, to come again and to go again. So I realised that when I was in doubt that the Course in Miracles could work, there was doubt about who, you know, whether it was Jesus and where was this going to take my mind. Now, they're all egoic thoughts, but that's okay. We've got to acknowledge the doubt, and we've got to look at that doubt, and we've got to say, okay, there's doubt, and label it. I'm in doubt today. I'm not bad or wrong, I just have doubt. And then when you've got doubt, you can say, okay, he says that doubt will come and go. So within a couple of days, that doubt will go. So I'll just continue on with my lessons. Sometimes you may feel that you need a break, and that's okay as well. Take a little break if you feel that's what you need. So that line of Nasagadatta's, I just did what my teacher asked me to do, I could really see that is the key to being liberated from the egoic mind. So it's the egoic mind, that thought system. It leaves your mind and it becomes what is present after that is a state of mind which the Course calls the peace of God. So it's a peace that passeth understanding, and it's a very, very peaceful mind. And it's a very grateful place to live, and it is in grace. We live in the grace of God's mind, and we're seeing the world as God sees the world, which is love. So we're in a mind of love, loving everything, because our mind is, when your mind is free of judgment and of fear, you can't help but be in a peaceful mind. So if you imagine a mind that's got lots of fear and judgment, and you remove all those, it seems like it's called emptiness, but actually it's full of love. So I think there's a part in the Course where it says, the ego says, without all its fear and judgment, all would be chaos. So it tells you that without your judgment, if you aren't able to judge something as good or bad, that it would be chaos. But what happens is, without judgment, all would be peace, all would be love. But what happens is you don't lose your practical mind. You are able to discern, driving a car, crossing a road. We're not talking about the practicalities of a day-to-day life. What we're talking about is the thoughts that cause you suffering, the thoughts, the worrying thoughts, the judgments, the constant thoughts that go through your mind, that tell you how unworthy you are, how you're failing, how you're not good enough, how there's something wrong with you, that you're defective in some way, that you're unlovable. These are all different ways the ego mind, it's attacking us, and that attack feels so difficult and so terrible that it's projected out. And so we need to start with our own minds and focus fully 100% commitment to looking at our mind. Now, if we want to be free of suffering, if we want to have this peace and joy, this peaceful mind that is still and quiet, we need to meditate for a start. And I've talked with other course students, and I remember one just saying, no, there's no meditation involved. No, Jesus doesn't talk about meditation. In fact, he says you don't need to do it. I just said, actually, he's talking about meditating all the time in every lesson. He's asking us to be still. And, he's saying, just get still, look around the room and, notice these things. The book, the coat hanger, the cup. And it may not be meditation in the traditional sense of watching your breath, but it is part of that. He's asking us to still our minds and to actually, the Course in Miracles is a study. It is first of all, a study of your mind. You need to look at your mind. You need to know what your ego thoughts are. And you can't really, you can't see those thoughts unless your mind is still. And so it's a commitment into undoing these thoughts with the help of the Holy Spirit, because we can't do it. I mean, there's no way I could have undone my egoic mind on my own. I was totally immersed in my unworthy thoughts. And I think what happens is, as we practice the teachings, the workbook, and we read the text, something changes, something slowly shifts, and it's just a very slow burn. And it takes a long time. It's not overnight. And sometimes you have to do the workbook many times. And I think it's no use comparing. You know, how many times have you done the workbook? Oh, I've done it 3 times, you've done it 4. You know, it's not a competition. You might do it once properly, and that's all you need to do with a full commitment. And it's really, what I've found is the most important thing, if you really want to be liberated from your egoic mind, is every day committing to it. When you wake up in the morning, make another commitment to this day. I'm going to put the Holy Spirit in charge. I'm going to, when I get upset, I'm not going to react. I'm going to stop reacting. So whenever someone upsets me, I'm going to zip my mouth. I'm not going to speak back. I'm not going to rant and rave, or I'm just going to stop that for a start. And then when I get time, and I make time for this. So you might need to turn the television off. You might need to change some of your life, what you're currently doing, and put your liberation of your egoic mind as the number one important thing in your life. It needs to be the number one thing. Now, you can still do your other things. I'm a quilter, and I was an accountant, but I did quilting as a hobby, and I did end up teaching and working in a quilt shop for 12 months and teaching classes, and I really enjoyed that. But there was a stage where I felt guided to stop sewing, and I didn't know whether I was going to go back to it. I was guided to stop. I stopped everything except work. I had to go to some paid work at that time, but I was mindful. I was repeating my lessons while I was at work. And the funny thing is that I had what they call an awakening while I was working full-time as an accountant in a busy job. So I'm always love to share that, because it's very important for other minds to know that when you dedicate yourself into this course, in, you know, whatever, you know, if you're following Muji and you're doing his meditations and you're completely committed into that path, and you're listening to him and you're going within and you're doing self-inquiry, and whichever teacher you're following and whatever path you're doing, the most important thing is the commitment in your mind to it, and to put it as your number one priority in your life. And you know, if you have children, obviously you know there's practicalities in life that you need to do. So someone said I quilt and have a long arm. I'm not sure who that is. Someone in the sanctuary. So I wish I could live closer to you. Oh, it's Ken. Oh, that's gorgeous, Ken. Ken is the manager of the room, and I love it when men quilt, and there's a lovely guy called Quilt Dad on the internet that makes some lovely quilts, and the long arm is like a automatic, it does machine quilting, and I wish you lived closer to me because it would save me from doing all my quilts by hand and on my sewing machine. But what's happened is when I stopped quilting and didn't know whether I was going to go back to doing it, when I did go back, I actually had some miracles when I was quilting. So what happens, you'll find that whatever you're doing, wherever you are, once you've made this commitment to God, He'll use anything. And I had a quilt that I was, quilts have borders on them, and this border had tiny little dots, and I'd sewn lots of different pieces of fabric together, and so the dots weren't really in a line in a way, they were put together. So it's the border around the quilt, and I started sewing this zigzag, and it went right around in one continuous motion, and there were tiny little dots, and I was following the dots, and I was just making this zigzag. And I started just on one dot, and as I got around the other side, I never expected to come back to the dot that I started on, and that's pretty unusual considering those tiny little dots. And the fact that it wasn't continuous. And as my sewing machine came up and I was sewing up to it and I was coming back to the little dot, the fabric had dots on it, the little dot that I started on, I heard the words, you come back to where you started from. In other words, you're coming back to your innocence. And I started crying because I was being shown by the Holy Spirit. Even in the sewing, I was being given these very strong spiritual lessons, and I just sort of was, wow. And I was making that quilt for my sister's 50th birthday, and I ended up putting a flower where those dots joined up, where the stitching came together on that tiny dot, because it was basically a miracle, really, because of how it all turned out. And I put a little flower there, and when I gave it to my sister, I just quickly explained that that quilt had a lovely message. Well, I didn't say it was a message. She probably wouldn't have understood that, but I just said to her, I had an amazing experience sewing just this with. Basically, it's the quilting, it's keeping the 3 layers together. So the stitching is to keep it. It wasn't actually sewing up seams, it's just to give it some decoration. And it was quite a modern quilt, so it was all these random zigzagging all along, and then finally meeting up on the same dot I started on. And Jesus giving me this powerful lesson that we come home to our innocence, and we come home to where we started. So we've gone on a journey of these zigzags, but we've never left. So, and I've heard, I think it was David Hoffmeister or someone talking about a lady knitting in the front seat, in the front of a gathering, and she's knitting, and I don't know that it was David Hoffmeister, it might have been some other, it might have been Adi Shanti or something, and she's nodding away, an elderly lady, and she said, oh yes, I've been given all my lessons through my knitting. All my spiritual lessons have come through my knitting, and Jesus has shown me. So I just thought, this is incredible. You don't have to go anywhere. You know, you can go to work, you can go in nature. If you look around, it's going to help you. Something will appear in front of you, and you'll get a knowing from it. There'll be some sort of lesson, and it could just be you know, anything, wherever you are, once your mind's connected into God, the lesson really comes through. And I love the fact that Ken quilts, so I'm really looking forward to having a chat with Ken off air about his lovely hobby. It doesn't matter what you do. You could be repairing old cars, vintage cars. It really doesn't matter, because in this world is actually a projection from our mind, and it's coming from a mind. And when it's been used by the Holy Spirit to change it from a world of separation, from the egoic mind back to the mind of God, you'll be looking out onto God in everything. So everything becomes God, and you are God. You feel yourself as God, and there's no separation. So you're not feeling yourself as a separate entity that's separate from everything else. And so you're feeling, this is the awareness of perfect oneness that he talks about, which is heaven, because if you're perfectly one with everything, it's not one in body, it's one in the mind. So what we're learning to do is we're learning, first of all, about our mind. We have to understand our egoic thought system, not understand it, notice it. We have to pull it apart. We have to say, okay, there's an egoic thought. And we have to get a sense of something looking at these thoughts. And we can ask the Holy Spirit for help with that as well. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today was manifesting, and there are still some teachers around that talk about manifesting. And just a moment, I'll just take a sip of my coffee. And I have some people messaging me about manifesting, and it's really sort of laugh a little bit, because how could you, manifesting to me means that you think you need something that you don't already have, or else why would you manifest? It's impossible. I don't understand anyone talking about manifesting, because you've got everything now. So unless I'm understanding that term incorrectly, I've not really done any manifesting before. I think they're talking about manifesting things in, like, I guess because they haven't really explained, but if you say you think you need a new car or something like that, you don't need to manifest anything. The Holy Spirit will provide. All you need to do is trust. And so that's what he's saying, that everything will be provided. You don't need to go trying to sort your way out. And he's constantly telling us, don't do that. Join with me. Give your mind to me. Let me lead you. I'll lead you. If you need something, I'll lead it to you through quietness, and you will get the guidance of where to go. You might get guided to meet up with someone for dinner, and you go there, and then they happen to mention that their neighbour's got a car they want to get rid of, or they're travelling for 12 months and they're going to leave their car at home. And there's so many millions of ways that what you need can be brought to you. I've always thought of manifesting. It never felt right to me. Even years ago, I just started to do it, and I tried to do it, and I thought, I don't know, this just doesn't feel right. The only time Jesus might hint at some sort of thing about that is in chapter 30, Rules for Decisions. And he's just saying, think about the day you'd like to have. But he's not really asking us to think about, I'd like to have a new red Ferrari. He's asking us, what are the things you'd like to experience So he's really asking us to imagine the day we'd like to have, how we would. I usually imagine myself laughing with people. So I imagine if I know that, for today, I know my sister is coming for lunch today. My brother's here visiting. I'm living at my mum's at the moment, but I'm looking to move into my own property at the moment. I've been guided to do that. And so I know that there's going to be a few family members around. So my visualization, I guess, is what Jesus is saying, visualize the things you'd like to do and what would happen to you and the experiences you'd like to have. So in my mind, I just see this laughing, this joining, this love, this joy. And so most days, that's what happens in my life. There's a laughing and there's a joy and there's just love. And that's what he's asking us to get into, to visualise and get into a state of looking forward, visualising that joy. He's not asking us to manifest the red Ferrari. I don't think so. He doesn't say that, so I'm not going to say that you can't do that. But what happens with manifesting is, say you really liked a red Ferrari and you concentrated on that. And I do believe that you can manifest anything from thought. But what happens is he's always asking us in the course, what do you want it for? So this is one of the reasons why we need to go back and say, what do I want that red Ferrari for? Now, you might want it or desire it to sell it and give the money away to charity or something, I don't know. But really, what do you want it for? Everything through God is to help and to love and to extend. So if you want something for yourself, if you want to say, oh, I would drive around in that, and other people will look at me and think, oh, that person's really rich and famous or something. I mean, that's just the egoic mind, and that doesn't last. You might have 10 minutes or a couple of days of driving around in that car, but it doesn't bring lasting peace and happiness. So I'm not saying don't manifest. I'm just saying look at what is it for? Why do I want to manifest this particular thing? Because it might actually show you in your mind where you're not trusting that you have everything now. If you look around yourself now, you've probably got everything you need. And if you find that you don't have anything you need, there's something that maybe you don't have any food, the best thing to do is to get really quiet and meditate, I suppose, quiet your mind and ask the Holy Spirit for guidance and follow that guidance. And there could be something there at the end of it. So really what it's about is completely surrendering your mind of knowing. You have to be in the I don't know mind. So we're really coming into a mind of I don't know where or what I need, and I don't know where I can't, where it's going to be provided from. And I have found in my journey, I was put through, the Holy Spirit and Jesus put me through into a situation where it looked like I had nothing. I did have some things, but I couldn't see them. It's funny, my mind couldn't see what I had, and my mind was focusing on the lack. And it's like I look back now and I think, gosh, how could I have thought that way? But I did. And so I had a full cupboard of food. The pantry was full of food, but something happened financially, and I looked like I felt that I had no money, and I went into absolute panic. And then I was taken through this beautiful, Jesus came to me and he showed me that there was no lack. And from that day on, I've never, ever worried about money. I don't worry about what I'm spending. I'm just guided. And if I feel, it just feels intuitively to get something or not get it. It feels very, very strongly one way or the other. I have absolutely not one skerrick of fear about money, and that left it through that lesson. And it was beautiful to be taken to the brink of fear. It's so much fear, and to have it all dissolved in that moment, and to then live because I was very worried about money all the time, and that's just a mind of lack. And so, you know, he's asking us to bring everything to him, which I did. I called on Jesus. I said, you really need to help me here. I'm really in a lot of fear. So what he's asking us to do is just come to him with open hands and just say, I don't know. Can you help me? So with the manifesting, I would say if you're with a teacher that's talking about manifesting, there's nothing wrong or right about it. I just say, just ask yourself some questions. What I'm manifesting, what is its purpose, and what do I need it for? What do I want it for? And have a look and see if it's anything to do with the ego, anything to do with ideas of lack. And there's something that those thoughts need to be undone. And you find on this journey that you end up giving away a lot of things that you really don't need. You'll lighten up, and basically you'll give them away or sell them, and you'll become generally, unless that's your journey or your guidance, is to hang on to those things because they'll be needed for God's purposes. You will lighten up, and you'll find yourself with very, very little material possessions, and you'll feel really great. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling, because anything you need, will be given to you. And there's a deep, deep trust in life, bringing life, which I mean the universe, God, in whatever you need to do. So just on the meditation, a friend did ask me, did I meditate? And I said, yes, I did. I did my morning routine when I committed into the Course in Miracles, and I did just do what my teacher asked me to do. I would wake up an hour earlier than I needed to get out of bed to get ready for work. And I'd make a cup of tea, and I'd go back to bed, and I would sit in bed, and I would meditate for half an hour. Now, I'd been meditating, but I'd never done it routinely. And even though he says don't sort of get too stuck on a routine, I decided the routine for me, for that particular time, I needed a routine. I don't do any routines anymore, but at that time it felt very strongly that I needed to get routined. So I would meditate for half an hour, then I would read the lesson, and then I would contemplate the lesson for half an hour. And I might as well read some of the text. So that was my morning routine. At night, I'd get home from work. I'd feed my dog, I'd feed myself, I'd take the dog for a walk, and then it was totally devoted to Course in Miracles, meditation, reading, contemplating, joining with God, listening to teachers. At lunchtime, at work, I would have my headphones attached to my phone. I would eat my lunch and go for a walk, and I would listen to teachers. On the way to work in the car, I would listen to either the course on tape, I'd listen to Course in Miracles teachers. So every second that I wasn't at work, I was focused on the teachings of A Course in Miracles. And meditating, it would be a constant cycle of or just a constant giving, surrendering, asking. So I had a full egoic mind. I was very depressed before I started, and I was very judgment, and I was very full of fear. And through a total devotion, a devotion to Jesus, a devotion to trusting at that moment that I could have this peace of God. And I didn't know how it's going to happen, but just a full immersion, a full commitment, and a full devotion. And so meditation did play a part in that. And I still meditate. If I want to keep this peace of God, I need to get my mind quiet and meditate. And you'll find that most spiritual teachers that have awakened or been liberated, their mind or are awakening, meditation is a practice and it is encouraged. And so it's funny because some awakened teachers say, oh, you don't need to meditate. But then you ask them about their background, and they've had a big background of meditation, of meditating. So I just find that hilarious. He talks about, I'm just going to read, where are we? We've got another couple of minutes. I was going to go through, actually, if you want to really have a look at this and you're interested in this subject about, just quietening your mind and joining with God in the morning and getting a bit more of a dedication, getting a bit more of a commitment to undoing your egoic mind, your suffering mind. Number 16 in the Manual for Teachers, how should the teacher of God spend his day? And right down at number 4, it says the course is always practical. It may be that the teacher of God is not in a situation that fosters quiet thought as he awakens. And I imagine, if you've got young children and they're running in, they're jumping on your bed, and you're getting them up to get ready for school, if this is so, let him but remember that he chooses to spend time with God as soon as possible, and let him do so. Duration is not the major concern. So he's not saying you need to sit in meditation for hours. He's saying the duration of how long you sit and quieten your mind, it's not the major concern. One can easily sit an hour with closed eyes and accomplish nothing. One can easily give God only an instant, and in that instant join with him completely. Perhaps the one generalisation that can be made is this: as soon as possible after waking, take your quiet time, continuing a minute or two after you begin to find it difficult. You may find that difficulty will diminish and drop away. If not, that is the time to stop. Now he's talking about as soon as possible after waking, take your quiet time. So he's asking us to meditate. And he's saying in that meditation, join with God in your mind. Join with him. And I tell you what, when you join with God, your heart opens. You're connecting with this love that is beyond anything in this world. And it's just truly beautiful. And your heart will just sing, and you won't be able to express it in words. It's truly an experience of an amazing love that cracks open, and your mind will experience this love as you keep practicing. And God knows your dedication, and you will have this revelation experience of this peace and love that's beyond words. And he says that same procedure should be followed at night, and I did too. I did the same thing at night. Perhaps your quiet time should be fairly early in the evening, if it is not feasible for you to take it just before you go to sleep. It is not wise to lie down, for it is better to sit up in whatever position you prefer. So he's asking us to meditate sitting up. having gone through the workbook, you must have come to some conclusions in this respect. If possible, however, just before going to sleep, it is a desirable time to devote to God. It sets your mind into a pattern of rest and orients you away from fear. It is expedient to spend this time earlier. At least be sure that do not forget a brief period, not more than a moment will do, in which you close your eyes and think of God. And one of the things I recommend, and I do this meditation quite a bit, and there was a time where I did it every day. Gary Renard has a YouTube clip just called True Prayer, and it's a very, very short 5-minute video. It's a recording, it's not a video. It's got some pictures on it, but it's really about quietening, listening to it if you need something to help you, and it'll just take you through it. And initially I found I couldn't really concentrate on it, but what we need to do is we need to persist. We need to have abundant willingness and persistence on this journey, and we do get there in the end. He tells us we're already awake. Everybody's woken up to this love. And the atonement, the Holy Spirit is waking us up. We think we're in time, but actually there is no time. It's always a timeless reality of love. The other thing, I'll talk about true prayer next week. I was going to do something on true prayer and abundance, which I thought linked in with today's topic about meditation, and was just talking about manifesting. But what I'm really saying, or what Jesus says, which I follow, is that you have everything now. When you have the peace of God, which is a mind free of egoic fear and judgment, when you have that mind, and when you're living in that mind, you have everything. You really do feel like there's no lack, because you don't have any thoughts that you don't have everything. So there's the only reason you could feel you don't have something is if you have a thought about it, that I don't have this, and those thoughts are lack thoughts. And when your mind is still, when your mind is still and you've got peace and joy, whoever comes into your surroundings, you'll have open-hearted love for them as their true self, connecting your true self, connecting with them, and you'll have just no thoughts about them. There's no past to cloud your judgment. Your judgment is that they are the Christ self radiating, and you'll feel their holiness. And you'll just be in love with them. You'll just love them. You'll just love them. There'll be no judgment. You'll just love them. And that's the mind of God. So I'll sign off now. It's a minute to go. And I'll just say thank you, grateful. I love you. I bless you. And I honour you. And yes, start that commitment. Just keep committing in. And even on your journey, just keep revising your commitment each day. I love you, God. I love you, everyone. And blessings of love. So thank you, everyone. I'm signing off. I love you. Blessings.